Now I did pull it a little bit off the camshaft gear to give enough slack to get it started on the tensioner. Then I'll go back and forth and work it on both gears. Then I'll use that 1/2 inch to tighten it up a little bit, and the 1/4 inch drive to turn it tight, and then I'll tighten this 1/2 inch nut back down. Alright. Okay, and when I tighten down this bolt on the tensioner, that'll be to 22 pounds. Okay, I've got a 16 millimeter to take the spark plugs out. Yep, I spun it around twice and the marks all lined up beautifully. So I've got another 5/16 for the bottom. I hooked the ridge on the top, and I just have the two 9/16 to torque in at 9 pounds. Okay, my 45 Torx takes the bolt that holds the tensioner wheel on. It's lots of little shavings. And we got this new tensioner that goes on there. 45 Torx. Tighten that puppy up. Since I'm using this hoist, I was able to wiggle the engine and get this far bolt behind the timing belt. Then I get to rotate and wiggle this one down into position. The third bolt is easy to get at once it's lowered down, so I'm not worrying about that right now. But I'm getting it in place for these two and tighten these two up. Alright, I was able to get it over this little mount bracket here using a little pry bar. It's a 15 millimeter, torqued to 85 pounds. Alright, that's the last 15 millimeter. I had to, since I waited to put that bolt in its place, I had to bend this down to slide the bolt in there and torque it up. I'll bend that back up. Next we move to this 55 Torx that goes in there, but I'm going to have to use a screwdriver put in there as I wiggle around the engine supported by the hoist. And that way the screwdriver will let me know when I'm close instead of only when I'm dead on. Then I'll put the Torx in there. Okay, we've got a 3 1/2 inch size that'll go through the power steering pump to here. And the notch here for this bolt on the power steering pump. Slide this down in here. Well, I'll slide it down in and then start feeding the bolts through the holes in the pulley here. And as long as I have the hoist here, might as well lift the engine up to be able to easily get to the bolts on the pump. Alright, as I'm working this motor up with the hoist, keep these two tabs straddling this guide that's hanging down. So I'll get it closer to lining the bolt up in there. Yeah, you can see it, but not as well in the camera view here. But I'll raise this up a little bit as I keep checking down in that hole, see if I see the hole for the bolt. Alright, I got that set in there, not totally torqued down to 85 with the 55 torques. Then I'll get this one connected, not quite torquing. Then I'll get the one inside the engine compartment, and when they're all in place, I'll torque them down to 85. After that, I'll slide the crankshaft pulley on there and torque that down to 100. And that's where we're at. Now to get this one lined up, I untied the rope from the back bracket, the one for the alternator, and just left the one on the power steering pump bracket lifted with the hoist, which rotated the engine so it was nice to fit that 18mm bolt in there. So that one's in place also. Just needs to be torqued to 85 after I get the third and final. Alright, we got to make sure the center of this bolt is 4 11/16 from the center of this hole, I guess. Which it is, so that means I can tighten down that to 85 foot-pounds. Also, if I didn't mention, I torqued down the spark plugs to 20 pounds. And then I'll get these other bolts down to the 85 and thread locker there also. Then I'll do the harmonic balancer to 100 pounds with thread locker. And then I get to put the belts on. Alright, 10mm to reattach this ground. 1/2 inch is what I used for the tensioner for the alternator. 15mm, tightened up the 2 bolts for the alternator. Replace the radiator hoses. All I have to do is put water in, cap it, and away I go. Alright, here's the final test. There she goes. Sounds good. Yeah, just a little side note, the reason the engine revved up was because I still hadn't been able to get a hold of an idle air speed control. That motor, even the dealer doesn't have it. They'd have to ship it in from Mexico. So I didn't intentionally rev it up like that. It just happened. Alright, good luck with yours. Mine's